Why, hello everybody, and this is Aaron Swanlick, and I will be going over a brief kind of mini lecture on this idea of logos and how we can use that in our persuasive speeches for our Comm107 speeches, which are coming up hopefully this weekend. So the term I want to look for and the term I'm going to isolate in this short video for you all is this idea of logos, or a word that is being used. It usually translates to a logical interpretation of things. And let's just get into the brass taxes of it. So it's multidisciplinary, meaning it's used in the fields of rhetoric, it's used in the fields of philosophy, of different religions, and what I think that means for us is that it's a useful heuristic, just meaning interpretation, or it's a useful tool for us to utilize in conceptualizing an overall or overarching argument or a form of argumentation. And so it means different things for different folks. It could mean an individual word, it could mean a plea, it could mean an opinion, based upon who is defining it and kind of the discipline that it's being used. But for this classroom space, we're going to treat it as a prevailing logic, a sort of thing that underlies intelligibility of kind of like a form of communication between two people that allows them to really transfer kind of like a mode of thought or an idea or a complex statement to others that we can both test using pretty much pseudo or quasi-scientific models to really understand what other people are going to be saying. So we're going to look at first the most popular mode of looking at logos, and this is the Toulamin mode or Toulamin model of argumentation and refutation. So here is the three main components that you need to know is that there's a claim, which is just as an overarching statement or something about the world that you can potentially prove. And so I could say right now that it is gray outside, or that the weather is awful right now. And so we can go on to prove these things by using or giving data, which can be both quantitative, evaluating through like numbers or censuses or polling of other people, or qualitative, which is valuative based. Typically speaking, people rely on quantitative data because everyone assumes that numbers can't lie, but also we should realize that interpreting numbers is very subjective, and we have to put in our own modes of interpretation. We can lie to each other with numbers, so always keep that into the back of your minds. And warrant is the thing that connects those things, so your claim and the data. So there needs to be something that bridges the logics together. Most of the time, the word because is sufficient enough, but some of the times you're going to see some random data put out there that doesn't really back up a claim, and you can think to yourself, yo, this doesn't meet the snuff. In a separate video, I'm going to go over some argumentative fallacies, and we'll get into it. So here's a claim for you. We'll look at three examples. Example one, Rick is probably going to get sunburnt. And we can see the data below. Rick has fair skin, red hair, freckles, and has a severe lack of melanin. And so that probably means he's going to look like a lobster next time you see him. So the warrant in this is because he has these things or qualities about himself and he's standing outside in the sun all day, he's probably going to look like a lobster. And what we could also add, and there's a couple key things I'm not really discussing in here, but we can talk about them really quickly, is the concept of a rebuttal. A rebuttal is acknowledging all of the problems with our overarching claim because we want to be as close to the truth as possible. Sometimes when you're making a good argument, it's not enough to just exclude the bad arguments, but to acknowledge the good ones will make you seem like a more reliable kind of speaker to the audience that you're going to give. Also, using qualifiers, which is to say, limiting the scope of your overarching argument is also a very productive method for you to kind of like give yourself that reliability vis-a-vis yourself and the audience members that are going to be listening to you. So, for instance, I can say you all are the best Comm107 class I've ever had. Now, I could also say you are the best Comm107 class I've had this semester. One of those two claims is more believable. It's clearly the first one because you're the best Comm107 class that I've ever had, and I don't tell that to all of my Comm107 classes, nor am I saying which Comm107 class I'm talking to right now. See, there's a bunch of ways in which you know I'm probably lying, but I would never lie, I promise. And so let's look at another example. Example 2 is hydroxychloroquine, I can't ever say that right, can cure the coronavirus. The data I could give you is that the president seems to think it'll work. The backing, some physicians and big pharma people that stand to profit think and hope it will work. Rebuttal, there is no conclusive evidence that says it will work. So the warrant in this situation is that because that brings the data backing rebuttal together with the claim to make an overarching statement about, or at least an overarching argument. Because people are hopeful that hydroxychloroquine can cure the coronavirus and stand to profit, they believe it will work. Now let's look at example 3. Example 3 could be an easy claim such as Zoom is an awful corporation that has less competency with privacy than the Hillary Clinton campaign. Data, they store all of their private emails on a remote server that is not password protected. In this situation, we can use the word because to fill in the gap of these two things to make an argument that people will listen to and people can interpret and people can attack. So there's a bunch of independent parts that you can say don't line up, don't match up, or aren't good enough in the first place. So for your speeches, I ask you to do a couple things. First is come up with a couple main arguments that you're going to use to promote your overarching argument. So whether your overarching argument is college athletes deserve to be paid or something along those lines, you should have a couple main kind of like arguments or claims that you're going to prove. I think 2 would probably be sufficient if you're using the research to provide evidence for why your claims are going to be true. This is where you can really spend a lot of time in your speech developing nuanced and deep arguments. And the goal isn't to make as many arguments as possible, but to make as many good arguments that you can potentially do in your 5-ish minute speech. And remember to keep everything organized and all of your subpoints organized. And use evidence. Remember, claim, data, warrant is all you need for an oral citation. Remember, repetition. I've said that 100 and 1,000, a billion, trillion times to you all this semester, but make sure you continue doing it. And don't be afraid to use quantitative modes of kind of like saying, hey, here's a bunch of data that says college athletes should be paid. Or qualitative, you could tell a story or a narrative to really drive home that point, to create this overarching style of logos to really move and persuade people to kind of want to listen to the thing that you're trying to say. I hope you all are having a great day. Ciao, ciao.